Elementary division was born in the world of positive whole numbers. For the subject we are now investigating, there are no fractions and there are no negative numbers. Please keep this in mind as we work. Let's think about dividing a number by itself. 12 divided by 12 asks the question, how many times can we take 12 from 12? Well, 12 minus 12 equals 0, and we're done. So 12 divided by 12 equals 1. And we see that 1 times 12 equals 12, so this seems right. Try a few numbers for yourself, like 3 divided by 3 and 8 divided by 8. In all cases, the answer is always the same. Any number divided by itself is 1. But is that really true for all numbers? What about 0 divided by 0? Well, if 0 works like all the other numbers, the answer should be 0 divided by 0 equals 1. And in fact, 1 times 0 equals 0, so this seems right. However, there are two ways to see why 0 divided by 0 equals 1 is not correct. First, 0 divided by 0 asks, how many times can you subtract 0 from 0? Let's try it. 0 minus 0 equals 0, but we can go again. Minus 0 equals 0, but we can go again. And you can see the problem. The subtractions never stop. Can you subtract 0 from 0 one time? Sure. Can you subtract 0 from 0 two times? Of course. 3 times? 4 times? 1,000,000 times? Yes, yes, and yes. In other words, there's no natural stopping point. No one number uniquely answers the question, how many times can you subtract 0 from 0? So, the first way to see the problem of 0 divided by 0 is to just try the subtractions. For the second way to see the problem, let's try the multiplications. We already saw that 0 divided by 0 equals 1 implies that 1 times 0 equals 0. So 1 seems like the right answer. But if we choose 0 divided by 0 equals 2, it is also true that 2 times 0 equals 0, so 2 also looks like the right answer. Try a few other numbers for yourself and you will see that all numbers can be the answer to 0 divided by 0. So the second way to see the problem of 0 divided by 0 is to just try the multiplications. Not being able to find one unique answer to the question 0 divided by 0 raises a huge philosophical problem. What does it mean when one mathematical operation has many answers? Sadly, we're not going to do a lot of philosophy in this video series, but this much must be said. A mathematical operation must have a result, and the result must be unique. Mathematicians say it like this. If an operation fails of existence or fails of uniqueness, then the operation is not mathematical. Dividing by 0 fails of uniqueness. Therefore, we cannot divide 0 by 0. But what exactly is the problem? Is it that we're trying to divide 0 by 0, or is it that we're trying to divide any number by 0? In other words, okay, we cannot do 0 divided by 0, but maybe we can do 3 divided by 0 or 10 divided by 0, and so on. Well, it's pretty easy to see dividing by 0 is always impossible. Try for yourself 1 divided by 0, 2 divided by 0, or any other non-zero number, and you will see the subtractions never stop, and the multiplication never works. You cannot divide by 0. For the record, you can divide 0 by any other number. For example, 0 divided by 1 equals 0, 0 divided by 2 equals 0, 0 divided by 3 equals 0, and so on. Let's consider 0 divided by 1. This asks the question, how many times can you subtract 1 from 0? But you cannot subtract 1 from 0 at all. So the answer must be 0. 0 minus 1 equals 0. But wait just a moment. We might be in trouble here. If we subtract 1 from 0 and get 0, it looks like we can go again. So minus 1 equals 0, minus 1 equals 0, and so on. This looks like it could go on forever. And now we have exactly the same problem as with 0 divided by 0. The subtractions never stop, and we have many answers to the one question. So it looks like I'm wrong. We cannot divide 0 by 1, just as we cannot divide 0 by 0. But now let's look at multiplication. If 0 divided by 1 equals 0, then it must be true that 0 times 1 equals 0. And it is. But if we choose 0 divided by 1 equals 1, then it must be true that 1 times 1 equals 0, and that is just not true. Try a few more numbers for yourself, and you will see that all numbers fail the multiplication test except 0. Because when you multiply two numbers together, if one number is 0, the result is always 0. Therefore, by multiplication, 0 divided by 1 must be 0 and only 0. Something strange just happened. In all cases, iterated subtraction and iterated addition, in other words multiplication, always work together to produce the same result. Even with 0 divided by 0, iterated subtraction and multiplication produced the same result in that they both failed to produce one unique number as the answer. However, with 0 divided by 1, iterated subtraction fails, but multiplication succeeds. By multiplication, 0 divided by 1 equals 0. As an aside, I hate it when the narrator of a book or video makes a comment that will only make sense months or years later, but I can't help myself. I'm sorry. We're going to touch on a teeny bit of philosophy again. We started by defining division as iterated subtraction and merely observed that if you can subtract out, you can add back. In other words, we made a simple observation about inverse operations. Specifically, whatever division does, multiplication undoes, and vice versa. With the problem of 0 divided by 0, we watched the system of division collapse. Neither subtraction nor multiplication could produce one unique answer to the question, how many times can you subtract 0 from 0? With the problem of 0 divided by 1, however, something else just happened. Subtraction cannot produce an answer, but multiplication can. Subtraction fails division, but multiplication saves division, and not for the last time. In a later video, when we investigate division with negative numbers, we will see again how subtraction fails division and multiplication saves division. You might now be getting the faint impression the relationship between division and multiplication is more complicated than just inverse operations. Inverse operations means only that whatever one operation does, the other operation undoes. But in the case of 0 divided by 1, division, as iterated subtraction, is not even a mathematical operation. In other words, division does not do for multiplication to undo. On the other hand, multiplication alone produces one unique answer to the question 0 divided by 1. It's starting to look like maybe we did not define division in the right way. Instead of defining division as iterated subtraction, maybe we should somehow define division as a kind of multiplication. Well, if you keep studying math, in a few years you will learn that is exactly what happens. We will scrap division as iterated subtraction and redefine it as multiplication with the inverse of the divisor. For example, 12 divided by 2 will no longer mean how many times can you subtract 2 from 12. It will mean 12 times 1/2, where 1/2 is the multiplicative inverse of 2. In other words, every division is really a kind of multiplication. But we will not discuss this anymore in this video series. In this video series, there are no negative numbers, no fractions, and division means iterated subtraction. And now we return to the business at hand. Therefore, 0 divided by 1 equals 0. In conclusion, the divisor can never be 0. The dividend can be any number, including 0. In the next video, we will discuss division with remainder.